Hi everyone, welcome on board to helper.tv, where you get the reliable news that is tailored for you, and of course where you can actually comment and interact. I say a very big thank you to those who have taken time to subscribe to this channel, and if you're yet to subscribe, kindly tap on that subscription button and also the red bell icon so you will be notified whenever videos such as this are uploaded. Ojukwu and Biafra. Professor Philip Ojukwu'S second-in-command son. Philip is a professor of drama at Michigan State University, United States of America, United States, USA. His father, General Philip was the second in command to Chukwuemeka Ojukwu during the Civil War. In an encounter with him during a visit to Nigeria, he reminisces on the war and the post-war Nigeria. The agitations for resuscitation of Biafra, the historic and international dimensions of the war. Why the full story of Biafra is yet to be told, and how peace and unity in Nigeria can be attained, among other related issues. He spoke about all of this. In retrospect, he was asked, how did Nigeria survive the deep socio-political upheavals of the 1960s that culminated into a fratricidal civil war? He said, I don't know what that Nigeria survived in terms of moving forward, because I think survival is not just existing. Survival is making progress. I don't think we have learned the lessons of that period, or that we are even moving forward economically or politically. If you speak to most of the citizens of this country, you realize that they are deteriorating. Things are not working out well. People do not feel safe. There seems to be a growing concern about violence, especially about the fact that our security systems don't seem to be doing anything about these problems. People are very worried about tomorrow, about basic needs. They are worried about infrastructure and think that perhaps we are more divided than we were in the 60s, even after the war was supposed to unite us. I don't think that has been achieved. Asked, what are your basic impression of the strife of the 60s, the events that led to them, and how the resolution comes? There was a talk I gave recently where I said that boundaries, especially with colonialism, new boundaries were created and made us very territorial increasingly. We became very conscious of what we own, our own state, and instead of cooperating with our neighbors, we tended to push our neighbors out of our states, and we see ourselves as controlling the political and economic resources we had in those boundaries, and this will keep those people apart from those people who are cooperated with in terms of trade, language, culture. And so there is a root cause of that problem. And the more we fragment ourselves and believe that we can take care of ourselves and take care of our own business, the more we isolate ourselves, the more we move, the more we cannot function together the way we should. Many people think that when you are giving local governments and states, they have become autonomous. But we don't realize we are balkanizing ourselves more and making ourselves weaker. We are increasingly fragmented into smaller, weaker groups. As long as we remain weak, what other forces that come against us, we are not going to withstand them. Whether they are political forces, whether they are forces that manifest in form of corrupt governments, or whether they are just violent groups. We are not equipped in our tiny units, in our weak units, to withstand the challenges. Let me talk a little bit about your dad, who was a top military officer in Nigeria and later became the second in command in Biafra behind Ojukwu. He handed the instrument of surrender of Biafra to Nigeria. What influenced his surrender speech? Secondly, were you scared he was going to be killed when he was going to the surrender? He replied, well, to surrender was considered to be the right and most pragmatic decision at the time. That decision should have been made. It was agreed in order to save lives. It has to be remembered that at this time, very little was left of what was originally Biafra. The morale was down. There was a lot of starvation. There were deaths on large scale, and the army had been weakened tremendously. Biafra had far little resources to withstand the larger and more equipped Nigerian army. So it made sense that some kind of peaceful resolution should be pursued. And I think this was done with a delegation. My dad did not just make that decision alone. Biafra was a well-structured government, so the leadership of Biafra took that decision because he, at that time, had taken over power from General Ojukwu. He led the delegation, and if you look at the surrender. The surrender was more of negotiation, requesting that our people need to be part of a new constitutional arrangement. If you look at it carefully, it was not all about surrender and submission. Of course, I feared for my father's life, although I was a mere boy. The war had already instilled the fear in us with bombing, strafing, and death that were all around us. At some point, we lived near refugee camps, and every day people died. And so there was a sense of fear hovering over us. And when we went, quote and unquote, into the lion's den, we did not know whether it would come out or not. Yes, there was a lot of fear, not only at that time, but even after the war. After the war, he was detained. What was life like for him, for you, and the family and relations who were in a state of apprehension? As a matter of fact, 3 days before the end of the Civil War, we were among the groups of people who were living in the cargo planes. And though my mom and me weren't physically in the country, but it was constantly receiving messages, so we knew what was going on. There was a lot of fear, but we felt safe because we were outside of Biafra. So you were outside of Biafra? He said, oh, like I said, 3 days to the end of the war, we fled. We were there in the theater of the war until 3 days before the end of the war. And when he was in prison, we weren't there. News was coming. We had resettled in a number of places, and finally in Ivory Coast, where a huge number of refugees had been taken and a camp with a school was set up for them. Me and my brothers were availed with the opportunity of going to school, but my mom was constantly receiving information about family members that had died, about the destruction of our home in our state, Akwa Ibom, and about the situation with my father. So there was a lot of anxiety, even though we were out. But again, I want to re-emphasize that we left probably 3 days before the war ended, so you know it would be safe to say that we were there till the very end. My dad had been put into jail, not by the federal government, but by Colonel Obasanjo at that time. There were all kinds of mixed messages about how that happened. Even said that General Gowon was not aware of it. There was a lot of pressure, international pressure, because of the war crimes that had been committed by the Nigerian side. There was a lot of pressure to release my dad, especially since people did not know what his ultimate fate was going to be. But we thank God that he was eventually released on General Gowon's order. How long did he spend in detention? That is what I am not sure about. I think it was probably few months. But for whatever reasons, I don't want to get the facts wrong. Give me a number of days. But it wasn't so long. It was like a year. Let's go into the nitty-gritty of the war. The impression most people have is that it was a war fought by the Igbo against Nigerian state, and at the end of the war, some communities and individuals in Nigeria seized the properties of the Igbo. Now, as an Akwa Ibomite, were there any downside, or did you experience any dichotomy in Biafra as a non-Igbo? The war was, and I had never been about Igbo. I'll repeat again, the war was never about Igbo. It was ultimately an international historical event because it involved Nigeria. It involved a lot of foreign countries. Of course, the Igbo was the prime target, but of course, if you look at certain facts, you understand that many non-Igbo played a key role. The secretary to Biafra government, N.U. Akpan, was not Igbo. He was from Uyo. The person who suggested the name Biafra, Chief Opigo, was not Igbo. He was from Bayelsa. So a Bayelsa man is the person that brought the name Biafra. He was from Bayelsa. He had people who fought diligently for Biafra like Colonel Achibong. He wasn't Igbo. There was Okiginam Basi. He was not Igbo. Generals on Biafra side were 6. 2 of them were not Igbo. They were Major General Effiong and Brigadier Okon. In addition to these leaders, thousands and thousands of fighters were from areas around Ogoja, Cross River, Akwa Ibom, modern-day Bayelsa, and parts of what we refer to as Delta Rivers. It wasn't just an Igbo affair. That propaganda, however, let me say that with the creation of states, there were some divisions that were created between non-Igbo and Igbo. It was a deliberate ploy by the Nigerian government to create divisions, animosity against Igbo within the enclave. The creation of states actually started to isolate the Igbo because the so-called minorities were given the impression that they had their states, they had their autonomy, and so some of them actually switched sides during the war. Some switched sides after communities were captured for the sake of security. Some, after the war, went into denial for self-preservation. Some had wholeheartedly supported Biafra, denied that they did that. Like I said, it was for self-preservation or for political and economic purposes. There was a lot of backlash. Many people would turn against the Igbo immediately after the war to say that my family had tried to fight Igbos or to kill them, or that the Igbos tried to destroy the unity of Nigeria. I have to say that, however, that Biafrans did help matters. They did not help matters. Some Biafran soldiers, and it wasn't a government policy, took it upon themselves to go after whom they considered traitors. And a lot of those and these traitors were supposedly minorities. Non-Igbos were also subjected to suspicion and some form of vendetta. Even my father's nephew, Sergeant Gabriel Effiong, who fought for Biafra from the beginning to the end, was almost killed under these circumstances. The Igbos tried to kill him. He was stopped by one of the vigilante groups in the community. The people who were with him were able to convince the people in the community that it was General Philip Effiong's brother, and so they spared his life. So ultimately, Biafra should be held responsible on some levels for radically going after people who were not Igbos, but were minorities, but yet were part of the Biafra. In fact, the person that gave that Biafra name is from Bayelsa, claiming that they were traitors and in some cases even killing them. They did not help issues, and that also aggravated the tension between non-Igbo and Igbo in Biafra. Do you believe that the tensions have died down now? I don't know. It's easier to destroy than to build. So there has been a lot of rebuilding, but this sentiment still exists because people still express them. And you hear a lot of animosities against the Igbos by a lot of people in what used to be the eastern region. It was as a result of the seed that was planted during the crisis where Igbo people in Biafra were killing the non-Igbos that fought even in the war. What were his basic impressions about the man he worked with? I mean, Ojukwu. My dad wasn't anything but a trained soldier. Ojukwu was a historian. Most of other officers had other professions. Some were accountants, engineers. My dad was a soldier. There were those who he was higher than in rank, people like Ojukwu and go on. But as a professional, he was willing when he returned to the East. He submitted to the authority of the governor because position really takes precedence over rank. I would say that for the most part, it was a professional relationship. He gave him his due respect. I don't know how easy it is to submit to someone who initially was your junior. Ojukwu was a junior to my father. That was how it functioned, and I remember very well. Of course, there may be some kind of disagreement in terms of policy, military strategy, and so on. It exists everywhere, especially in war situations. Very urgent, and where there were a lot of desperation. There was fear. There isn't a single answer to all problems. But I don't think it's something that is anything negative. You said Obasanjo locked up your father after the war. Was it a personal thing between the two of them, or he just did it out of overzealousness to please his bosses? I don't know, but Obasanjo was not even a member of the Supreme Military Council. He was a colonel in an army that had generals, but at that point, he had the power. What happened was that my father had given an interview with Drum magazine, and the impression I get from what my dad had said was that he was alleged to have said things that were considered inappropriate. The Drum interview is reproduced in his book. It was after that interview that Obasanjo threw him into detention and in jail in Port Harcourt. So it may have been because of that. If you look at the history after the war, there have been a lot of efforts by those who won the war to silence other people and not let them speak out. It is because if you speak out, you are going to reveal and expose a lot of things. Some kind of legitimities to Biafra, because Biafra did a lot of creative things, inventing his own weapon, building a lot of things indigenously in science and technology that had been allowed to rot away since after the war. Biafra was creative. This is what I am saying essentially. Biafra, if you talk about the war, those who won the war do not want give Biafra any literacy. Let me make a quote from your father's book. He wrote, "Healing will come with justice, but Nigeria is not ready." What do you think about this quote? There appears to be a resurgence of Biafra in the last 10 years. It has assumed a life of its own with a mammoth crowd of groups in the vanguard of Biafra, with the tales of suffering and deaths that mirrored the old Biafra. What do you think that are still some people who want to tread? Do you think there are still some people that want to tread that path again? The people pushing for Biafra are not demanding war. They are not asking to fight war. What they are doing is self-determination, even though they are reinvoking Biafra. I don't see them declaring war. Hopefully, it won't come to that. Now, we need to remember that there have been efforts through media, academic institutions, government, and so on over the years, because they have been controlled by those who won the war to try to silence a lot of people so that they don't tell the story. There have been efforts to suppress the story, but you cannot do that looking at the loss of human lives on a tremendous scale. A lot of these young people pushing for Biafra may not have been there during the war, but they have heard of the experience. They have heard of the loss of human lives. and older brothers and sisters who are directly affected by the war, and even some died. A lot of them are looking at buildings all over Nigeria that the land belonged to their families, but have been taken over and declared a abandoned property. So the pain is there. As much for those who were there during the war, they have a right to agitate. They have a right to speak out in any democracy. In any civilized society, people have the right to agitate as long as they are not breaking the law. Now, what the leadership should do is reassure them, engage them. When people are not happy, that's what leaders do. They engage them, they listen to them, they reassure them, even if they disagree with them. I thoroughly respect the rights of different groups to agitate, but they are doing it in a different issue. I can't go into those details. If I were to advise them, I would say, first of all, arm yourselves with knowledge and history. If you don't know the source of a problem, you don't have a solution. Also, you need to be organized. While this is so emotional for all of us, at some point we have to try and reason together and not just rely on our emotions. The groups also need to be prepared to engage those who disagree with them. We should not dismiss them, but they should dismiss those who they shouldn't dismiss those who disagree with them. You see, there has to be a sense of organization on their part. That as far as I would advise them, but as far as the details of what they are planning and how they intend to manage the country and what that country will look like, I really don't know. With the things that are playing around the country now, especially the power game and insecurity, do you foresee another bloody war? I mean, there is already a bloody confrontation. There is Boko Haram insurgency, so-called Fulani herdsmen attack, all the kidnappings and banditry, shooting on highways, they are there. What I don't know is whether they will transform into a full-scale war. I don't know, and I hope not. Again, our security forces do not encourage me. Every government established a strong security force or forces that are meant to protect the people. I don't know whether we can trust our security forces at this time. That's my greatest fear. The other thing is that we are increasingly polarized, increasingly fragmented. We talk about similar problems, but we talk about them with different voices. That's not going to work. We have to come together and address these problems if indeed we believe they are serious problems. We cannot continue to delude ourselves that everything is fine. The violence is already there. There are already bloody confrontations. Now, whether it is going to escalate, I cannot say. I hope not. But our security forces do also not encourage me. So this is the son of the, in fact, he experienced the war, as you can see him say. And this is the son of Effiong, and he's called Professor Philip Effiong. This is Ojukwu'S second in command, and is said to share part of his own experiences and the internal issues that he has also seen. So guys, that's what it is for now. May I remind you to tap on that subscription button and also the red notification icon bell. Please do tap on it so you'll be notified whenever our videos are uploaded. Thanks for stopping by.